Welcome to Stand Up for Doctors. I'm your host, Kim Downey. Thank you very much for joining us. This channel is dedicated to amplifying the voices of doctors, other healthcare professionals, and patients as they share their unique struggles, triumphs, and passions. My mission is to build connection and create advocacy for healthy doctors, driving positive change that benefits both doctors and patients. This is a space for everyone who cares about the future of healthcare. If you appreciate this content, like and subscribe now. It really helps the episodes reach their target audience. And I'd like to welcome Doctors Diana Londoño and Dr. Jillian Rigert. Thanks for joining us today, Diana and Jillian.
Yeah, thanks for having us, Kim. It's fun to be here together.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I love we are all in blue and we did not coordinate before this. This just all happened. So we know we're synchronized and this is exciting. This should be fun.
Exactly. Yep. Blue is an energy color, right? Well, calming and energy, right? So that's us. And so I've had you both on individually before, and you were among my very first guests. So I'm going to have you introduce yourselves and let you share where you are in your life right now. And I will say that you're both truly amazing humans, and I just feel so honored to know you. So thanks for taking the time out to have this conversation today.
Yeah,
And
likewise.
thanks. So, to preface our conversation, today we'll be talking about how around a year and a half ago, I asked both of you, along with Dr. Stephen Lewellis, to collaborate on a Kevin MD article with me, and we titled it A Message of Hope for Physicians. And Kevin published it on National Physician Suicide Awareness Day, September 17th, which was extra meaningful to all of us. And it was the first time I asked doctors to collaborate on an article with me, and all three of you enthusiastically agreed, and it filled my whole heart. And I've now had about 24 articles published. And since yours, they've all been collaborations, mostly with physicians. So once again, thank you very much for doing that. I had no idea at the time, what it was going to spark. And each of you is in a very different place since we wrote that article not that long ago. And change can be scary. And I thought it would be a great inspiration to physicians to hear you speak to the ways you've pivoted and what you're doing and what you have planned. And we all know the challenges facing physicians these days, and we still need to offer a message of hope. Jillian, what would you like our audience to most know about you as we begin our conversation?
Oh, well, I want everyone to know that they matter, that they are loved, that they are worthy of living a life that's true to them. And I don't give a rat's poop what's on their CV because that doesn't define us. And understanding that message was important in order to save my own life from suicidality. And I'm at a point in my life where I'm so detached from high achievements defining my worth that it seems unfathomable to me that there was a point in time where I was contemplating risking my life because I thought that the shame of leaving a surgical residency would be so unbearable that I would rather die. So I'm here to support people because I know at different points of our life, we are willing to examine those deep-rooted questions that define us or we're not. And like you said, we need to be a message of hope for people. And sometimes that hope isn't able to come from within if we're so exhausted. So for me, I've borrowed help from people at times, and now I'm here to pay that forward. So if you are someone listening to this and need to borrow hope, we have it, and we are here to share it with you.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Jillian, and I'm sorry for the things that you went through. I'm just so glad that you're okay and just the light that you are now, for yourself and for other people. So thank you so much. And Diana, what would you like us to know about you?
Yeah, I love that message that Jillian said because, I say the same thing all the time. And you always have a podcast and like, what are the three things you want to leave with? And those are things that I actually say in my podcast. I say, you matter, you're worthy. And that, you really have to believe that. And again, if you don't, then borrow it because it is so true. And we are sort of fed this lie that there's something wrong with us, that it's sort of like, I was thinking today about like cactus. Like, how can you kill a cactus? It's pretty impossible. These are like resilient plants, but you could actually kill a cactus because you like overwater it or you really truly neglect it so much that it will die. And I think in medicine, it's sort of like that. Physicians are like the cactus. We like really ask for so little, to be taking care of our needs. We don't need that much water, but there comes to a point where we will get to that point where we will die in our soul and sadly our lives as well. And it's not a problem of the cactus, it's a problem of the environment that is taking care of the cactus. And sometimes you just have to leave that environment because it is so toxic. And we're so gaslit to say, like, oh, there's something wrong with us, and it's really not. It's the environment. Sort of like if you put a hand in the burner, you're not, like, you have to move it out of the way because it's burning you. It's not good for you. And it's so okay to pivot, and I think Jillian and I always, she talks about this a lot in her channel and her YouTube of like, pivoting is just not a dirty word. It's okay. And when we are so tied into our ego and our false titles and um, our accomplishments that we're so hold on to it that we don't want to leave it. We're so scared. Like, what will they think? What will I think? Who am I without this title, without this job? And the thing is like, we got to peel back those layers and we realize the first thing that Jillian said, like, we are worthy, we are light, we are love, and all these things are not our true selves. And when you let it go, it's just, such a relief, such a freedom, and such a lightness. Yes, yes, yes,
Like
yes.
one of my favorite books right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. And we're reading that too. And, letting go of all this stuff, not holding on, that talks a lot about emotions, holding on to all these negative emotions that just drag you down, but like letting go of these titles. And I think for me too, this year of pivot, because I've also pivoted, like Friday was my last day at my employee position. And, who am I without all this job? Who am I without 3 years of doing physician coach support? Because I pivot that too. There's a lot of pivots. I'm leaving the country for 6 months. Who am I, in different roles? So really examining that. And when you let that go, you just have so much freedom to do other things and let other things into your life that would be incredible opportunities.
Well, thanks for sharing. I'm going to have Jillian respond. I did just wanted to say that metaphor with the cactus is so powerful, like literally and metaphorically, right? That you might have to go out if you're doing surgery hours without water, just like a cactus is so little water. So that was really powerful. Thanks for sharing that, Diana. Jillian, what did it bring up for you?
Yeah, well, she talks about the lies, right? And how we often think that we are losing ourselves when we leave titles, but really we're losing ourselves when we stay. We're
Mm.
so often abandoning ourselves to fit into these roles that we perceive are going to give us some sort of worthiness, some sort of security, some sort of stability. But really, when we're not living in alignment with our true selves, it does the opposite. And to truly appreciate that, Diana said, like getting out of the environment that is toxic. Like so many of us have normalized that. So oftentimes I think about the metaphor of being a fish in the water and asking the fish, how's the water? And they're like, what water? Like once you're, been swimming in it for so long, it's really hard to get an outside perspective. So really standing out on the outside or talking to people who are on the outside looking in and being like, why are you tolerating that? And I find also if you've grown up in a similar dysfunction, so I think about systems always. We got the family system, societal system, religious systems, the organizational systems. These are all systems in which we exist. And for me, I identified that I was taking on the similar role that I had in my own family system in the organizational system. And I was thinking I was always the problem. Like I was very quick to think anything that was going wrong was me. And I was like, oh, I've adopted that from a very young age. And I'm curious how many people do the same or they attempt to do the opposite in order to resolve something that was left from childhood. And so I'm just considering now that I've migrated and transitioned to become a marriage and family therapist. Marriage and family therapy is all about examining the systems. And I'm a certified chief wellness officer that's all about examining the system's impact on the individual. And in losing and stripping ourselves of all of these faulty titles that Diana mentioned, that's really when we truly get to know ourselves. And we're so afraid. I think many of us are afraid to sit with the discomfort of facing the who am I at a deep spiritual level. Diana and I talk about this a lot, being spiritual beings living a human experience. And I was just listening to a documentary called Becoming Nobody. I think that's what it's called, Becoming Nobody. And it talks about channels, like us being on the channel. Now it's, we're recording this near New Year's. People are talking about changing the body. That's a channel. So if you're focused on your own body, you'll start to judge other people's body. Next channel is the psychosocial. So we're thinking about, like, he called it therapy channel. And then we talk about emotions. Well, then the next level is the spiritual level. And we're not looking at differences or judging people based off of their emotions or their physical appearance, but looking at both of you and just seeing the oneness, the connectedness, and asking, like, who are you at that deep spiritual level? What are you here on earth for? And the more I talk about that, the more I'm like, people are gonna be like, what a quack, right? Because we're not used to that. And we're also not used to talking about death. But the more, I had a life-threatening illness. Y'all have been through a lot. And what I realized is I had so much anxiety about death, but until I just appreciated, they said in the documentary that, like, once you get to a point where you just see death as a part of the change process, is the trend, like, it's just something to change and to accept, then we can start to live more intentionally here. And for that to reduce your anxiety and also support you in living a more fulfilling life now, like, that has been game changing, because otherwise I just was so overwhelmed with anxiety, and a lot of us are coping with those emotions by doing more, achieving more, and getting further and further away from what's going to bring us peace.
Yeah, well, thank you for sharing that. And I feel like these conversations are so important, and somebody that needs to hear it is going to hear it. And sometimes it has to be like the right time or the right way to say it. Because right now I'm reading Dr. Andrea Austin's book, Revitalized. I don't know if you're familiar with that. She's an ER doctor. And I was just realizing, some of the things like the physical therapists overlap with physicians, certain things about like just traumas, or a patient dies and you have to go on to the next room. And when she was just talking about the traumas of being an ER physician during the pandemic, well, I was initially working as a physical therapist during the pandemic, which brought its own challenges, and then also navigating cancer 3 times, right, during the pandemic. And just everything, I just reading her book, I was like, I was there. I lived it too. Like, as a healthcare professional myself, and seeing it through a doctor's eyes, and being a patient. So it's just, I think every conversation holds something that, somebody needs to hear. So Diane, if you want to speak to anything Jillian said, and if you want to speak any more specifically about your pivot.
Well, yeah, there's so much there, but I mean, what you mentioned is like our interconnectedness. We are all interconnected. We all affect each other. And also, when we realize that, we start living a little bit differently, because we realize whatever I do, it actually affects the other person. And this is actually subconscious as well, and consciously. I mean, when you walk into a room and somebody is like happy and excited, like you feel that. And when you walk into the room and, in the surgery, I mean, nurses always, learn to walk in eggshells when there's a surgeon who's in a bad mood or is having a difficulty during surgery. Like they feel that energy. I mean, it's palpable. So we affect each other. And then when we are, not in a good place, we're hurting, then that happens to the next person that you come into contact with. So this is so important. That's why it's important to heal and to really do the work, because, for example, my word for this year is heal. And it's because if I want to see that in the world, if I want my colleagues to heal, if I want, the world to heal, to be in a more loving place, like what do I have to do? I have to do that work too. I can't expect it from somebody else and not do it. And, leaving burnout is step one. You regulate your nervous system, but then you really got to go deeper, whether you're going into these systems or these other facets, like the physical. What are you doing physically, emotionally, psychologically, energetically, spiritually? Like they're all related. You can't have health and healing if you neglect one. So everything has to come into play. And again, it's all related. It's all coming together. So it is so important that we kind of spend this time, New Year's is a good time, but every day is a good time to do it, to go through and like, what do you want to heal this year? Like, what do you want to make better? How can we contribute? And then we start talking about things like purpose, like Jillian said. I mean, these are spiritual questions, but they're, it doesn't have to be religious at all. It's just, what is your purpose? How can you give back? What did I learn that I can, pay forward to others. Did I overcome an illness? Did I overcome burnout? Did I, have something that I learned that I can help others with? I think that's the purpose of life. Like Ramdas said, we're all walking each other home.
Mhm.
We're all helping each other, and that's really the purpose to be here. And I think that's why I like these conversations. Like, how can we help each other? Stop the cattiness, stop the competition, just help each other, celebrate each other, be with each other when things are rough, because it's not all happiness. There's really challenging times, but how can we sit with people and be with them without fixing them, just being there for them?
Yeah, for sure. So, Jillian, anything you'd like to respond to what Diana said, and if you want to speak specifically to your own pivots?
Well, she was talking about, our interconnectedness and also the importance of our own healing. And what I know is that we're only able to meet people where we're willing to meet ourselves, and same with the other people meeting us. So there's a lot of times where we're trying to support people, but they're not at a place where they want or are able to tap into emotions or things that are heavy. I think about this when, there's a lot of talk about narcissism in our society. So I'm not going to diagnose people, but just thinking about that, those traits and what it's associated with as an example. And oftentimes people who come across like they're narcissists, at their core is insecurity and so much shame that they're unwilling to look into. So they project it on other people. And if you have been shame bound for a really long time, like you absorb that and it can lead you to a lot less wellness. But if we can identify and Diana said a lot about the energy is like separate what's your energy, what's theirs, and what's truly yours to heal, and what is needed for the other person to heal, and where are they able to be supported. Diana made a post about she's not a healer, but she helps people with healing. And I thought that was so important because we can't get other people to heal. Like if we want to, we can't fix other people. We can support them just like the cactus, provide them an environment where they have the nutrients where they can really support themselves in healing. But in accepting that not all people are going to be in a place that they want this information, we may not be in a place where it's the time to process. I know a lot about trauma. And for me, if I don't pace, I flood and then I avoid. So it's really important to meet ourselves where we're at and to pace ourselves. And then also recognize that not everyone wants to hear, like you said, people have to be at a certain time, a certain place to hear the messages and receive them in a way that's helpful for them. Times they want to avoid. Well, compassion, curiosity, non-judgment. What's that about? I'm curious because what I say isn't meant to be right or wrong, black or white. I say it from the stance of what I know in this present moment, and maintaining that beginner's mind and curiosity, especially as physicians and in PT and in the world today where we're trained to be right. And that knowing is high prestige, while allowing ourselves to just remain curious and explore and not put up all of our guards, but also to just appreciate that there are times where we need to be protected in this world as we heal because there's so much re-traumatization going on. So I think that took us off on a few different ways that we could go. But that permission to pivot is like the fluidity of what I just said. It's like, well, I thought I was going to be a military surgeon. Well, that was really to protect myself because I'm a really highly sensitive person. And actually, it aligns more with my essential self to become a marriage and family therapist because as somebody who feels emotions deeply, it made more sense for me to feel the emotions, help people to feel the emotions than to avoid them in the persona of being a military surgeon.
Wow. Well, there's so much in all of that. The one thing I do have to speak to, as you says, that we can't fix people. So, just like doctors, physical therapists, right? You want to help people, you want to fix them. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Enneagram personality
Mhm.
types.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm a one, and just this morning, I had to pull it up on my phone when you said that because it's I get this a daily message, right? And it's something sometimes it speaks to me. And today it said, I now release feeling that it is up to me to fix everything. And I was like, oof. Like I'm like, I resemble that remark. So
Yep.
Diana, if you want to respond to anything Jillian just said, and then also you just mentioned that Friday was your last day at your job. That can be a very scary thing if you'd like to speak to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't find it scary. I mean, I feel a lot of calm and peace. And I think when we're making decisions or any pivots, something to think about is like, how does it feel? Do you feel peace and calm, or do you feel, heavy and dread? I mean, when you're trying to decide what to do, if it's not a hell yes, then you shouldn't do it. If you cringe, you're like, oh, that doesn't feel good, then listen to that. That is your intuition, your soul, your higher self really speaking to you to say, this is not for me. And, yes, I'm leaving or I left. And, so what's the next step? I have this deep sense of calm and peace and really trusting the journey. And sometimes we don't have all the steps and everything laid out. And there's a lot of things that are going to come up that are going to be challenging. There'll probably be tears. There's going to be a lot of stuff. But I really, really trusted. And, I've hit it before and it was fine. And I will do it again and I'll do it again because it is never worth like your soul, like that's the only thing you come to the world with is your soul, and you're going to leave with that. So, like, really pay attention to how you're treating that because life is short. And if you are living a life that is not aligned to your values, to things that light you up, that you feel are wrong, that are not just like aligned to you, then like, why are you doing that? Why are you paying that price? So to me, leaving was an easy decision. It really took me a few minutes to be like, nope, this is just not right anymore. I don't want to do things this way. I don't think they're right. We are fed these lies that the system we work in is just how it should be and just become more efficient in a broken system. And I don't agree with that. I don't believe that. I think there's better ways to do things. So, we may not know all the steps. And if we know our why, then we'll figure out the steps. People have done it. We can get help. That's why there are other people that we want to connect with. But if not, we just, figure it out. We make our own map, our own journey, but one that is aligned to us. And I think that's so important that we get stuck because of the fear. And when we are in fear, we're just literally paralyzed. The fear paralyzes us. And so we have to like move to like, courage to take that next step, courage to love ourselves, courage to love our family, whoever it is, that, really needs us to be in a good, healthy place. That's really important. So, there's always a solution. Like, again, that message of hope, like, there's always hope, like, always, always, always. And if you don't see it, yeah, I think, again, get help, get support, talk to a friend, talk to like your spiritual counselor, your best friend. I mean, anybody, to really get that courage to guide you along and get you to that next step. But don't stay stuck. Don't stay unhappy. Don't stay with like your ulcer, your migraine, your hair falling out, and all these like somatic illnesses that we get from holding on to the fear, that the anxiety, the like not speaking up, the feeling something's wrong and just keeping it inside. It's just not worth it.
Yeah, 100%. And Jillian, anything you'd like to share related to that? And also, your pivot is going to require even a physical move somewhere. So I'm just wondering how the pivot and the move feels for you.
I'm with Diana. I'm peaceful. I don't remain attached to places. I actually love, I mean, I knew it was my time to leave. I live in a city. My soul wanted to live in a forest. And so I'm moving to a very forested area and giving myself the opportunity to honor that because I justified staying for a really long time. It made sense, but now it no longer makes sense. And the only way it would make sense is if I kept using my mind and my ego to choose the decisions for me. And oftentimes it can be really unclear because we're so used to using our head, and a lot of us are detached from our body and our spirit. And when we have trauma, when we have, there's a lot of times people stay in domestic violence situations. And I find it very similar to why people stay in abusive work situations because we have this learned helplessness, learned hopelessness, or we believe that that's what we deserve. And so if you're so exhausted, like what Diana said, like get help, get what you need in order to start to heal and recover. Because if you're in a depleted state, it's really hard to dream. Like if you're in fear, it's almost impossible to make very intentional decisions. You're usually fight or flight and moving away from or moving out of danger, but yet it's really hard to conceptualize what you're going to run to. So oftentimes people will just jump into something just as harmful. So for this decision now, I really had to get into a state of calm and to allow myself to sit there. And even in like, I was offered this internship for marriage and family therapy that literally checked all of my boxes. And I was like, oh no, I can't do this. I was finding all the reasons why it wasn't going to work because Diana knows this. I'm really good at catastrophizing and identifying all the things that may not work out in a situation. shared with her recently. So some of my visions with that. But then I had to allow myself, same question I posed to Diana recently was like, well, what if it all works out? What if this is okay? And I prepare for the worst case scenario. So getting to a place where we can develop self-trust, and what will that take? For me, I do have pretty profound PTSD symptoms. I know I can't always trust my intuition when it comes to my physical cues. I do live with anorexia. The same thing comes with like nourishing. Well, kind of have to go against what my intuition is at times. So knowing where you have limitations and where you can trust yourself and where you might need deeper healing in order to really cue into those intuitive cues that are actually in alignment with your self, capital S. I've been doing a lot of work with IFS, so internal family systems, and realizing like you can consider it from a non-pathologizing lens of anything that feels like addiction or like things that are there that seem like they're harming you, like examine them from the lens of non-pathologizing is how is it protecting me and what is that deeper wound that it's trying to protect but actually needs healing. So again, despite, change often feeling, I don't know, I have a different relationship with change now as somebody, with anorexia, it was so rigid that I find I just really embrace change because before my life I felt like a prisoner in my mind and my body because things always needed to be the same. And I think maybe that's the benefit of working with anorexia. It was like, I don't want to be in this box. And so then I allowed it to translate to different aspects of my life and that self-trust and having this community, right? Because we can develop self-trust, but often as humans, we want to belong somewhere. And so we might stay in places that aren't good for us just because we want that sense of belonging. But if you have people that truly will love you authentically, it makes those transitions so much easier.
I love that. Do you both have advice? Say if you take a doctor, because I think of either, some of my own mid-career male physicians or doctors in our healthcare system, and they might have local families here, and they might just feel like that they have to keep doing what they're doing. If they still have student loans, if they have families here, if there's non-competes, but they're expected to see patients every 15 minutes. If they're struggling, and I know like Dr. Anna Shabir said, if you're feeling really low, even asking for help can be exhausting. Do you guys each have advice for a doctor that might be listening who might feel really stuck for those reasons?
I think there's always a solution. We just, again, we fight like our mind and our ego fights. Like non-competes are there, but I had a non-compete in Miami and, I left with my non-compete and it was removed because what I asked, I said, like, this is what I want if I'm going to leave, either I leave today or I give more time and then remove my non-compete. I mean, things are like fluid and flexible where again, we're so rigid that we think like, oh, this is the only way, but there's so many ways to go about things. So you can have non-competes and they can go poof. You can have loans and then you just make adjustments. Like maybe you have to downsize something. Maybe you may not have this fancy car and then you just get a Toyota or something like that. But there are compromises. But because our ego and what we think makes us valuable, we fight it. We're like, oh, I cannot not have this fancy car. So how could I leave that, for my own benefit? So I mean, there's always like ways to go about, but again, we fight our ego, we fight these titles, we fight like the monetary things that we think makes us valuable. And again, if we go back to the beginning, that we're worthy, we matter. Without all this stuff, then it makes these decisions like so much easier because, then you realize like all this stuff actually is not really what matters. And so it just makes it easier to let go. Again, like going kind of back to the book, like let it go. Like don't hold on so fervently to these things that are, give you false value. And then you can make all these decisions much easier. I think we get stuck in our heads. Get stuck in that ego, and then yeah, then you can't make these decisions. But also, again, when you're so exhausted, you can't like make any decisions. When you're so exhausted, fight or flight and burnout, you can't get creative to find a solution. So, even one day of like sleeping, can help you see life so much differently. A week, a month, who cares? Like your life is worth it. Just take that time. Take 5 days off, and then that's what you take off to sleep, to drink water, to get like your basic needs met, and then you can start being creative. Then you can start looking at life in a different lens. So time is so important for yourself, letting go of all these false ideas and letting go of like rigidity of things as they are, and truly question things like, is that really true? Like, I can't change a non-compete. Is it really true? I will not be able to leave with this loan. You know, I'm sure like you can find family to help, you can downsize. I mean, there's so many ways to do things, but we get so stuck that, we think there's only one way, and there's so many ways.
That's so important. Like Dr. Michael Hurst has said, is that true? Is it really true? What if the opposite is also true? And then my good friend Paul Murray, who started Newtown Action Alliance after the Sandy Hook tragedy, she's told me, you don't ask, you don't get. And that's exactly what you did, right? You could either say, oh, there's this non-compete, it's not negotiable, or you could come up with an alternative solution. So I think that's very powerful. Jillian?
Yeah, I think that the Byron Katie work is it true? That's her first question, and I don't love exactly how she often provides it, but people can Google the 4 questions by Byron Katie and also know the caveats that you can gaslight the crap out of yourself with that. So uh, disclaimers on that, but the is it true, and what Diana was saying about understanding what aspects of this are mindset obstacles. And then to Amna's point of being so low that you don't even ask for help. Well, some of it's shame driven, actually. I found for me in particular, and for most, people who in the physician sector, they're afraid to ask for help. They feel so much shame that they need help because we're taught not to need it. So is it an excuse? When I'm really tired and super depressed, actually reaching out is not what I need. I need to just sleep and then maybe I'll talk about it. But like the overstimulation is usually what brings me to depletion. So laying on the floor is what I need. And that could be a red flag for some, like, but that's what I know I need. And that's not a red flag to me. That's like, if I were to call somebody at that moment, it wouldn't be very productive. I'll just overstimulate myself. So what do you truly need if you need to sleep a little bit? But then also get to the lowest barrier of that support. Like, okay, well, if I don't have a whole lot of energy to set up a huge appointment, well, reach out to a friend. Like what do you have the energy to do right now? And then also what is truly blocking you from reaching out for help? Is it because you're so depressed you just don't have the energy, or are you feeling shame that you need help? Are you afraid you're going to be a burden, which often is what depression offers us, that oh, who wants to help me? But people want to help you. Like it's a gift when we get the opportunity to support someone, especially when we know that pain of feeling like it's just us and it's not just you. So there's always ways to help. And I love we often hear from healthcare lawyers, Amanda Hill always talks about like there's always a way out. There's always a way out. So contact, if you're in Texas, Amanda Hill, healthcare lawyer, and she's also a good resource for support when it comes to like what actually is true about this contract, where am I stuck, what's the reality of what I'll have to owe if I leave.
Thank you. I love all that. And I wish we didn't have to end because I feel like we could talk all day. How can our audience get in touch with each of you?
Yeah, I mean, they can find me on LinkedIn. That's usually where I live. You can also just go to my website, dianalondoñomd.com. But LinkedIn is usually the best. Sometimes I'm on Instagram, but LinkedIn or my website, the best, place to find me. Love to connect if all these things resonate. I can talk about this stuff all day because I think it's so important to bring to light all these things that can really change our life and, that of our community.
For sure. And Jillian?
Also on LinkedIn, and they can come join our other, a lot of these conversations. You both have been on my YouTube channel, A Life True to You. So I invite them if they need additional support, they need to continue hearing similar messages while they're also subscribing to this channel down below, like, subscribe, comment, come over to mine as well. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thanks again for being my guest. I really appreciate you both.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, Kim.
Okay, thanks. So in closing, to move the needle in healthcare, we all need to raise our voices and we all need to care about each other. We already know that doctors need to care about patients. Patients need to care about doctors too. So stand up, doctors, and let's stand up for doctors.